Ingram Smith, Bud Elliott, back again for another episode of the Nolecast. All right, Bud, we've closed the book on the regular season for 2021 Florida State football. This will be kind of our official season review. Look back at it, highs, lows, the real lows, and kind of what it portends as far as the future trajectory of the program, where the program is as we transition into full focus on recruiting, and as this staff, begins to lay the foundation for a class in 2023 that will be incredibly impactful for how they do, and a chance for them to to really put their imprint on this state. I don't know that anybody's going to dominate the state, as many in this fan base and others that are located in Gainesville and Coral Gables expect their respective school to do. I think those days are kind of in the past, but Florida State certainly has an opportunity to take advantage of some turnover here, and has an opportunity to lean on some of the relationships that they have built over time. But again, recruiting will be some of the conversation, but most of this will be based around what the year looked like and kind of an honest assessment as to the highs of game one, the lows of week two, and everything else that followed thereafter.
Yeah, man. So what? They go 5-7. Terrible start. I give them a lot of credit for not quitting when they probably could have. At least not, as a team. I give them a whole lot of credit for playing hard. This was a very weird way to reach 5-7, which, looking back on it, I think is what we predicted. So, hey, we got one right. It's hard to predict exactly how the season's going to go, Yeah.
It's an interesting conversation, because what we're going to be discussing is perhaps the most predictable result with the least predictable possible roadmap as to actually you got to that result. A theme, and I'm sure something that we'll continue to touch on, and you did, is that it was impressive, the resiliency of the locker room. And you got to give the staff credit for that, particularly with as much as this has been based around the portal. And they did a really good job of getting guys in here who both could have that 1 year, maybe 2 year advertisement that they're looking for, and at the same time be a successful piece of a culture that needed to change, and those guys needed to be that change agent. So I am impressed in what they did in the culture, or what they did in the portal, the guys that they were able to get, the culture that they were able to install, and you went out, you had a nice showing in week one. Everything in the world fell through the roof or through the floor in week two, and it wasn't like you had some kind of great rebound immediately. If you would have entertained you and I as we were making our way from where we watched the first half of the Louisville game, as we were transitioning in the stadium to the second half, he probably could have sold us on the idea that maybe we needed to pivot this to like a barbecue channel or something like that, because program was in a rough spot, and the fan base's interest in it was waning pretty significantly at that point as well. But they got things together, built on effort and focus incrementally, ended up getting some pretty significant wins that I think will do a lot for the future. But it's a hard year to recap. It really is. You've got to acknowledge the failure that transpired early, and also acknowledge the continual buy-in and improvement that took place in the final 4 or 5 games of the season.
Agree with you on that. So you want to letter grade this thing? Do you want to like on my son's report card, it has I don't know, accomplished, working on it, or not. I don't know. They use some nice word for not yet there. He's one of the younger kids in his class, so he's not yet attempted the balance beam or something like that, or whatever. How do you want to grade this thing?
Yeah. I mean, I think we could go a lot of different directions. Maybe we need to have like dramatic failure, improvement needed, improvement shown, full proof of concept. I mean, is that a decent enough spectrum as to the worst end and something that at this point, 2 years in, we can say with confidence that we think is reflective of this head coach and staff?
Sure. I mean, do you think this year overall was what do you think of it?
I think it was a strangely successful 5-7 year. I mean, I think that you showed enough that you have pretty significant support and buy-in, that you both have the right guy, and if the events of the last 5 days in the college football world needed people to be fully reminded that it is a whole hell of a lot easier and cheaper to support the guy that you have and give him all the tools successful to be the coach that you want him to be, as opposed to going out and flirting with paying somebody $9 million a year or whatever the open market's going to dictate the next time you get out there. Then yeah, I think maybe that message just landed with some in Tallahassee, that they are very confident. They think that they have the right guy, and they know that they don't want to go shopping anytime soon. And I think this year, from a pure macro perspective of the season, provided people with enough belief that this is a guy that they want to tie themselves to, and that they have confidence will be able to, ultimately this may not end with Mike holding what I was going to say a crystal ball or the more modern trophy at this point in time, but this is a guy that's going to put you back with a fundamental foundation with which to build upon, and not have you be this kind of vessel that was quickly going astray and kind of as rudderless as a college football program could be for about 2 or 3 years there.
I think that's fair. I give him high marks for keeping the team together over the course of the season. I think it, like, obviously, objectively, not a good year. Subjectively, when you take into account the roster, like you said, it met expectations in sort of a roundabout fashion. We learned early in the year that Mike's attempt to flip the roster culturally was not yet complete. Because I think if you had the type of practice habits and consistency habits, you don't have guys blowing off meetings, right? Or showing up baked, or like that. You did not get the team's attention correctly, and I don't think you handled it correctly against Jacksonville State. The casual sidewalk fans are going to remember that for a while. Guarantee there's a lot of people that don't believe in Norvell because they lost Jacksonville State. Now,
to clarify, when you say he didn't handle it correctly, do you mean going into that game or his response to the game afterwards?
Into the game.
Okay.
I think they actually did a pretty good job of getting the team together.
Right.
Post, and I don't mean like immediately post the game. I just mean, down the stretch. They also managed to keep the recruiting class together. Now, starting 0-4 undoubtedly hurt your chance with some recruits that you're not going to get back. Not kids who left the class, kids who you were still chasing. They've done a tremendous job of keeping the class, together.
Yeah. They, excuse me. I certainly think that the way you started impacted, well, I don't know, man. I mean, I think ultimately if Bama calls, the Pritchett kid would have been had a whole hell of a lot of trouble as far as holding off. You didn't do yourself any favors by going 0-4. But I honestly think you could be 8-4 right now, and if UGA turned on the full gas for Ba, he's probably going. So
yeah, that's more like he lost weight.
Yeah,
too early. If he had stayed heavier, you probably get him.
Yeah. Now you're right. There probably will be some kids that you pursued during that period of time that your message started to not land. But I think as far as the class on whole, it did a really good job. I'm not suggesting you said anything other than that. But I do think the way that your victories fell, and I alluded to this a second ago in kind of a long rambling opener, which is never a great tool in podcasting, but I do think that the way you beat Miami, and almost as important, the way you went up to Boston College and didn't look like a team that just got drunk on a small amount of success, right? You went up to Boston College, you're focused. I think you've got as much support here as a coach has had probably since 2015. I think people are fully behind this staff. I don't think Florida State's going to be one of these schools that just goes out and turns the world upside down when it comes to NIL, but I do think they've gotten their house in order a lot more in that, and they're ready to kind of walk into those waters. I think the Miami win was big. I think the Boston College win was almost as big as convincing everybody, hey, this is the guy, this is the right guy. We need to start showing the support and doing everything we can. Because again, Florida State knows where they're. I'm not saying I disagree with some that say, oh, this is always going to be a program that's hiring from the G5. No, I disagree with that. But you've had a real harsh reminder served over the last 4 or 5 days as to the money that's necessary to go even try to flirt with an elite or with a candidate that could be viewed as an elite hire, and that this school is fully on board with giving as much support as possible to this staff, this head coach, and seeing what ultimately blossoms from that. And I do think that has a lot to do with the ways that this year's seasonal victories played out. A long-winded way of saying, yeah, maybe the 2022 recruiting efforts of the class of 22 could have been slightly better had some of your wins been more stockpiled towards the beginning. But I think the way that it played out, the win over Miami, the showing at BC, a nice score at Florida, if such a thing exists, has you on pretty good footing and a staff that's eager to try to go out and put a second really elite class together and laying the foundation for 2023.
I think that's actually a really interesting point you bring up. It's something that we sort of disagree on, but I think you make a really good point there, right? And I think my mind has been changed some. That maybe starting 0-4, was not the disaster that it could have been momentum-wise, because you did turn it around, down the stretch. To the extent that kids watch games, a lot of them don't, right? But you send them graphics, you certainly let them know you finished strong, started to turn things around here. You may even send them graphics showing the terrible start you got off to, right? 3-6 and then 0-4, 3-10 to start the career, and then 5-2 down the stretch, or 5-3 rather. Like that's not something that's that bad, really. I am interested in kind of what you think. Do you think, given this team's schedule, should it have done better? Because I think about the preseason expectations for this team. Their Vegas win total was 5.5. I think you and I both fell on the side of 5, but 6 obviously more likely than 4. I don't know, man. I do think that like some of these teams, when I look at where they finished in SP Plus, right? So obviously you played Boston College, you played them with Jurkovic. Their ranking is going to be quite dependent on whether you played them with Jurkovic or not. They finished 71st in SP Plus. Now with Jurkovic, I think they were quite a bit better than that. They also had a flu game to end the year against Wake, and they got totally pasted, and they were missing a whole bunch of guys. Notre Dame is a legitimate top 10 team. Okay. Wake Forest, 32nd in SP Plus. Kind of got waxed by them. Their defense was pretty trash. You weren't able to take advantage of that. Louisville, 47th in SP Plus. Again, you were playing Milton, but they're not that great. You lost to them at home. You were really out of the game by the end of the first half. Syracuse, 73rd. You win by 3. North Carolina, 46th. You go up there, you win by 10. That was pretty impressive, I thought. UMass obviously take care of business. Clemson, Bills got them 9th. I would agree with that based on that defense. You battled them. I mean, you really never had hopes of scoring all that much, but you played hard. NC State, you end up missing Jordan again, and you get waxed. Miami, 34th. I guess what I'm saying here is like this schedule in the preseason, I think it looked tougher than it ended up being. And you still missed a bowl. That's not great. But I think this team also had more issues than I realized. So I don't know. I kind of have mixed feelings on this.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, week 2 is an unmitigated disaster. No excuses, no comment needed other than that's all but an immediate fireable offense if anything like that were to ever occur again. So there's no, I don't know how else to put that. I mean, it happened. It was, it wasn't great for your perception, made you a laughing stock, was horrible for the local economy, blah, blah, blah. It happened. You should have been 6-6 this year, at the least. That's something that will be kind of forever. I don't know if it'll be forever held against you, but it certainly won't be forgotten. Or maybe the recruiting success clouding my judgment of the season? Yeah, it probably is. But at the same time, it's also what you and I and many others said this whole season was all about. I mean, nobody expected to have a whole lot of success. You needed to put out a competent enough product to not see the class fall to pieces. Look, I don't know what the odds are. You're better than that than I am. But you caught lightning in a bottle, a unicorn, whatever expression you wanted to say. You could recruit for 200 years, and you're not going to find a kid that's as uniquely talented, maybe the best player in the class, who just loves your institution. Now, credit to Marcus Woodson. I'm not diminishing the relationship that he built there, but I think it's fair to acknowledge that the recruiting class was what this whole year was about. You did a great job of keeping it together. You may even flirt with a great job of closing and really sign an elite class here. But you were also the beneficiary of a piece of luck that you just don't ever see, where you see that type of talent, that type of elite kid, not just like your institution, but, be as seemingly as full-hearted a supporter of as many of the people that listen to a podcast like this or, consume your writing over at Noles 247 or whatever else. It's a very fortunate beneficiary, the likes of which you won't see happen again.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. What would you say? You want to go offense or defense here and kind of evaluate the overall performance? You finish 48th in SP Plus overall, so that they did hit that top 50 mark, and that's opponent adjusted. So while the schedule was easier than we thought, that is opponent adjusted. We basically said, or I don't know if it was a we. I said if they reach top 50 in SP Plus, I will really
agreed upon. Yeah.
I will not be bitching about things very much.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's fair. Obviously, my thoughts on some of the how the computer sees the box score for Wake and Louisville. That's only 2 games. The computer doesn't give them credit for playing BC with Jurkovic, so that matters. I'm fairly confident that this team overall performance was a top 50 level. I think it kind of nets out pretty clearly within the top 50. Offensively, they finished 56th in SP Plus. Of course, that factors in McKenzie playing for how many snaps did McKenzie play? He threw 139 passes, and he had 20 rushes. So, I mean, a couple games were worth the snaps for McKenzie Milton. He was a very clear miss in the transfer portal. Like, not an FSU capable player. Our fears on him were confirmed. It was like, wait a second. Like, let's go back to the offseason. I was told FSU was not his first choice. I was told that there were other schools that he thought he was going to be able to go to. and they did not want him. FSU pounced. I still think it was an acceptable risk and a smart risk to take on a guy that you had played against who was an absolute competitor and a really good player back when he had, two good legs. But it didn't work out for you, and you went 56 in SP plus offense. That's a pretty big, improvement from where you were last year, obviously. How much can we really buy into this year-over-year improvement stuff? I don't know. I was talking to Ralph Russo of the AP, and he was like, look, the very top teams, I think were really trying last year. Everybody else, I think, was just trying to get through the year. So I don't know how much you want to measure year-over-year improvement. I do think, I go back to the point, though, like how many of these guys would start for UF's offense? Again, as I said, I had two sources. One said maybe Robert Scott. One said maybe Jordan. I think they did a pretty decent job coaching this thing overall, man, especially when you were having to play musical chairs at the QB position because, Jordan with the health condition and stuff, just not – it's tough to achieve consistency there, which if you listen to our portal episode, obviously there's a reason why I think they should pursue an additional quarterback.
I give the offensive staff pretty high marks. I also give, this is repetitive, but whatever the thought process, theory, game plan was for Jacksonville State was embarrassing. You came out and you experimented a lot. And I know everybody's attention is on the multiple quarterback formations and stuff, but your whole first half was interesting. Very interesting approach to it. And the fact that you didn't just swallow your pride and let the guy out-athlete him, which is exactly what was required to beat that team last year, which is why it was such an unforgivable sin, in my opinion, is something that I'll remember. But look, man, coaching staff had to coach its ass off to have the levels of production that it did. You had to constantly try to play the game of paper, rock, scissors and hope you were throwing, paper when they were throwing rock and etc. You had to try to trick people constantly. Could never line up in base predictable, form down and distance and have success. I give the offensive staff an awful lot of credit for what they did, particularly at the in the back half of the year and some of the things that they schemed up to have the levels of success that they did. So I don't want to forget Jacksonville State, and I don't want to forget some of the things that were frustrating about the season, but on the whole, I give Dillingham and Norvell and Atkins a whole lot of credit for what they were able to draw up and what they were able to execute with a personnel that's still pretty damn limited.
I think when you factor in the recruiting as well that these guys do, overall, yeah, I'd give them certainly a passing grade given all the personnel issues that they had. And some people complain about a lack of adjustments, but some games you only had one card to play. It wasn't like you had any kind of ace in the hole, man. If that didn't work, you're dead in the water, just personnel-wise. So I feel like things are moving in the right direction there on offense overall. You know what else is really moving in the right direction? Our relationship.
Home loans that we've
yes,
seen?
Sir. 844 FSU Loan, 844 FSU Loan. We'll get you hooked up with Shannon and Chad. Absolutely the best in the business. I've used them twice. Price, quality, service, knowledge of the industry, expertise, true love for the Noles. Literally texting us again during the podcast and saying what's up to those guys. Almost 250 Nolecast listeners have done so. You could be that lucky 250th. Who knows?
You could be. You could also be the people that are tasked with evaluating the defensive side of the ball. This is tricky for me. I mean, there were, again, and not just Jacksonville State, there were things out there that were, again, a level of performance that's indicative of a coach that's not going to keep his job or a coordinator that's not going to keep his job in the first couple of weeks. And then there's also very real improvement, and some of that coincides with personnel changes. Some of it coincides with personnel buy-in. Um, this again, there's nothing that's real clear cut about this team and easy to grade, but the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to have a challenge with. I am going to point out, and we said it recently, and others have as well, that hey, look, you got one of the best position coaches of all time on this roster, and Odell continues to develop interior talent and put out a unit that was a whole hell of a lot of fun to watch this year. And that was the one thing that was consistent from the first snap against Notre Dame to some of the final possessions against UF. You had really nice interior defensive line play, nice defensive line play overall, but impressive what that side of the ball and what the ends coach and the defensive tackles coach was able to do.
I would agree with that. Did this unit play to its talent, play above its talent, play below its talent? They finished 38th in SP+. They do have some clear limitations at safety before they moved Jamie Robinson there. They have some continuing limitations at linebacker. I think it's fair to give them somewhat of a pass because of how many transfers you were using on defense, that they did not correctly evaluate some of their talent early on in the year. But the Louisville game was an embarrassment to me. Like that was the one. It was like, this is hot garbage, right? Louisville they're a good offense. They're 30th ranked offense in SP+. They're not, an amazing offense. And they killed you. It was not competitive in the first half at all. And you'd be like, oh, you made some adjustments. We've also proven that they stopped throwing the ball down the field, and stopped trying to push. I don't know. What would you say about these guys overall? Adequate? Above average? Below average?
The slightest of above average is job done here as possible. I mean, I do think you had some legitimate talent. You want to give credit for developing Jermaine, but Jermaine's just a really good player. He's better than you thought he was going to be. Keir Thomas, great get. Really good fit, both on the field and off. I want to give credit to Coach Marv and point out that it was very nice to see the development and emergence of a linebacker for the first time in a long time. Kalen DeLoach is a piece that you can build around and will be, one of the focal points of this defense next year. It's been a while since we've seen that. Still better job that needs to be done at linebacker overall. And I want to say Lundy, for what he is, I thought they got pretty good production out of Lundy. He's physicals all get out, runs straight line pretty quickly. If he's got to be in pass coverage, or if he's got to, if he takes a bad step, it's over, as it is with many linebackers, but him in particular. I think, all things considered, they did an above average job here. You do have some nice pieces. You also had some pieces that were, wildly overrated coming into the year based off what they gave you. And, you had to make a decent amount of movement and personnel to kind of get that right, not just moving, Jamie. Dent kind of had to take back or had to, get situated and get comfortable playing safety. It was just a work in progress. But on the whole, I would, say above average, or somewhere between a C+ and a B- job done with this side of the ball.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that they exceeded their talent level. I guess I could be talked into adequate on the course, of the season. They definitely got better down the stretch. I do think, especially when you factor in recruiting ability, you could do better at defensive coordinator. Like, how serious is FSU about winning, right? Like, I think they can get a guy to coach the defense just as good as Fuller, who's a better recruiter, if they want to go and spend the money to do it. Will they? Will Norvell do that? I don't know. He may be swayed by the development down the stretch. But Part of that development down the stretch was Jermaine Johnson and Kier Thomas kicking everybody's ass. And you won't have those guys next year. You will still have the issue of Fuller is not really an asset in recruiting. So, I mean, you got a couple guys on that staff that can recruit really well, and a couple guys who are still very much either improvement mode or just clearly like not good at recruiting on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's more than.
And you're going to have tougher competition there, right? Like I do expect Florida to recruit better under Napier because it's not Mullen. With Miami, we'll see. Like if they get Cristobal, you're going to be in some dogfights. 38th with the talent they had on defense, I can't say it was terrible. I can't. They improved a lot down the stretch. I still think you could upgrade that spot.
Yeah. I think there's certainly a premium placed on continuity, and I don't expect you to see a move at defense coordinator. But yeah, I mean, you certainly could improve. You could. I'm hesitant towards tying a move at coordinator as a pure reflection of how serious they are about that. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if you want to go pay significant money, there's better options out there. I don't expect that to happen. I think Florida State's defensive staff will be more or less wholly intact moving into the 2022 season.
I think that's fair. I'm not saying you have to go make one. I get the value of the continuity. I do. And for a program that has not had continuity, I mean, at all recently, you make a good point.
You want to talk special teams? I mean, I know that's not something we really do a whole lot. It's not going to be a pleasant conversation, but John Papuch is a really good coach. But whatever the effort was at special teams last year, this year, was one of the more embarrassing things that I've ever seen. And it finally, it's not fair to say that it cost you the UF game, but it put that game down a path that you really weren't going to win at that point. You flirted with it many other times. You damn near lost the Miami game because of your inability to handle punt return. Special teams is very bad. Punt return was a nuclear disaster almost from the first kick of the year. I don't understand how you were that bad throughout the course of the season. And even in Game 12, you've got rotational guys back there. You've got a guy who clearly doesn't ever want to catch the ball, but has been coached, hey, look, if we're going to have you out there, you've got to catch the ball. I don't know. It was, an F is too kind of a grade to give at least that particular aspect of special teams. And really special teams as a whole was nothing less than a pretty significant and magnificent at times failure.
I would agree with that. The interesting thing here is if you look at some of their metrics, this is unbelievable, and it doesn't really factor in turnovers, so I should note that because clearly it's off. But just their raw SP plus special team score has them 34th in the country, which again doesn't factor in the turnovers. So, and they had a couple, obviously. But Ingram, even without the turnovers, they were 107th in punt return efficiency and 108th in kick return efficiency, 92nd in kickoff efficiency. They were 11th in punting.
Well,
that's
some
really
nice
good
punts at the end of the year in particular. Yeah. I mean, and some of that, one of them was a UF kid doing exactly what we complain about all the time. Gave him an extra 22 yards. I think that ball was down on the 3 because the kid just the last minute decided he wasn't going to catch a ball that was 5 yards to the right of him. A subject matter that I'm oddly passionate about. But it just, I appreciate those. And it somewhat confirms what I thought I saw with my eyeballs. But, just all the effort, everything that goes into being a successful football team, and then to go around and have a unit that is just actively giving away swaths of yards. And I'm referencing the punt team this year, the punt return team. is madness. So I don't know if you see different responsibilities there next year, but something has to change. It's bizarre that we've spent as much time as we have talking about this, but it's also warranted. It was, nothing less than a dumpster fire.
Like, to be clear here, you, you're not going to fire John Papuchis over special teams. Special teams are not a third of the game. They're not. Like, I know that people love to say that. That's total BS. They're like 5% of the game. You know, he's done a very good job with the defensive ends, including he's actually developed Fuller and McClendon to where
McClendon is a way better player than I ever thought he would be.
Yes.
By miles. Much better player.
So, like, when I evaluate John Papuchis, I'm going to evaluate him about 95% of what he does on the recruiting trail and what he does coaching the defensive end room, and about 5% on what he does special teams. However, Norvell clearly needs to bring in somebody, a consultant or something in the offseason, and I suspect they're going to talk to a lot of people about this. And maybe getting Mortimer in there to return punts just fixes some of the catch the ball issues. I mean, he is the leading punt returner in Broward County history. So there's been a lot of fast guys who can catch the ball come through that county, as I know you're aware. But you can't be 108th and 107th in kickoff return and punt return efficiency. That does hurt you. I know I just said it's not a huge part of the game, but that does put you behind the 8 ball at times, man. That's not good.
That's not good. That will be the comment that we leave you with special teams overall, because it was the most PG way that we can put a broad recap of the unit, and hopefully it's one that gets a whole lot better. The good news is you've got nowhere to go but when it comes to something like that. The other good news is that you have the opportunity to work with our good friends at Congruity, and if you need somebody to map out a dramatic turnaround for you, then maybe Matt Lewis is the guy. Congruity is doing nothing but giving you the opportunity to experience your business optimized, highly customized HR solutions designed to enhance your brand, save time, save money, and reduce business risk. Matt can be reached at 844-247-4100 or Knowles at congruityhr.com.
Where are you at with this program right now? I know it's probably worth talking about the, how do I say this? Do you feel like Mike correctly communicated the expectations to some of the bigger boosters that we know in, the private conversations they had preseason last year, in the meetings they had that were, like they couldn't have booster club meetings, but if you're a big enough booster, you certainly got meetings with Norvell. How would you compare, because you're a little better on the booster side than I am, how would you compare like how they view his competency compared to like Willie's? Because obviously the results on the field are not great so far. But
I think he, as he did with the kids that were committed, he was very smart in his approach there. And this is not, I'm not breaking news, but the message was improvement, and the message was, you're going to see a team that fights. You're going to see a team that makes you proud as far as the level of effort that they put out. But the record, the win-loss record may not be fully there. So I think he did a really good job there, and it doesn't mean that when they were 0-4, people weren't pissed off. It doesn't mean that when they were 0-4, that a lot of guys just kind of emotionally decided to tune out for a little bit there. But on the whole, I think, Mike Norvell has an exceptional amount of support from the booster class right now, and in no small part, that is in thanks to, both the necessity that we talked about earlier in the podcast, but also because of the expectations that were put out there, and it'll be interesting to see what it looks like next year with that, and what that, how that kind of turns. I think Florida State, the expectation from some that I speak with is that you probably need to have 7 wins next to your name when you go into that Florida game next year. Maybe have 7, flirt with 8. That's what I think a lot of people with level heads look for next year, and then see that kind of not the final step, but that 2023 year being the opportunity to be back to a program that wins 10 games, can be a power player, at least in your own conference, or at least the part of your conference, depending on what Clemson looks like.
100%. Looking through some more of the stats to wrap the year. Listen to the transfer portal show. I think them taking 2 to 3 offensive linemen is really important in the portal. I think they are going to get this thing right via the high school ranks in the long term, but they do need some more short-term band-aids there for sure. You got to find a way to play better zone coverage next year. I really believe that. But I'm because I said some things about the defense that were not so nice. I want to say something nice. Like Knowles, Cooper, Brownlee, if he comes back, Robinson, Travis Hunter, Sam McCall. That's a pretty nice secondary, man. Like that's a secondary that, like, would that be a secondary Bama's happy with? No. Georgia, probably not. About 110 teams out there? Yeah.
Could be in a couple years, but yeah.
Right, exactly right. Yeah. I mean, like, would Brownlee start for Georgia? Probably not.
No,
Cooper.
No, Brownlee would not.
Certainly
Brownlee
not. No.
Yeah.
I will say Georgia's secondary.
It's not like
untested.
The rest of the team, but it's
untested.
Still pretty. Look at those kids. I'm not telling. I know you know those high school bios, but and a lot of 3-star projects on Georgia's roster right now.
No, they have quite a few studs. Interesting season, man.
Interesting season on the field. Not to be redundant, but I think as far as what we classified the main mission accomplished. Again, we'll have to see come the early signing period, and but Travis Hunter's LOI lands. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Okay, it's what we said it was all about from game one. Show enough progress on the field that this class doesn't just disseminate in front of your eyes. And you're able to do that and give yourself an injection of talent that was not just desperately needed. I mean, a prerequisite to even dream of having a moderate amount of success around here. You got lucky with Hunter, and by all accounts, you may well turn that into a really impactful recruiting class. And if 5 and 7 was enough to get you there, then okay by me. At the same time, some things transpired that can never, ever, ever happen again, and will not be forgotten. So, interesting year, complex year when it comes to really trying to figure out what happened, put a bow on it. But hopefully we've done as good a job as you could tonight. I know this has been kind of unscripted and rambling at times, but this is not just a simple cookie-cutter year where you can look at things, evaluate them, and kind of give some kind of quick boxed-up answer.
Yeah. It's never easy, man. It's
never
I think you've
easy.
done a really good job, though, showing the big picture part of this.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you were never going to be good this year. You did land the recruiting class home. You have a shot for a lot more.
It's never easy. You're right about that. It's also probably never as nuanced as it is when you suffer a loss at home. Maybe the worst loss in the program history at home, and yet you're still talking about a year which may be looked back as a success. So, complicated, complex, and nuanced year. As always, we just thank you so much for going through it with us. This program at times has been everything that it could possibly be to runaway fans and to runaway those that have an interest in it. and we as a podcast have continued to grow. And we thank you ever so much for that. And, the 10th year was an interesting year. And maybe the 11th has one that has a little bit more success on the field. But it's going to be a whole hell of a lot of fun to watch how Florida State closes this recruiting class and starts to lay the foundation for one that will be just as impactful as to the ultimate success of this staff and of this head coach. So we'll have recruiting here covered for you as we enter into the first early signing period, and look forward to bringing you a couple shows that are almost fully focused on the subject matter. But, Bud, unless you have anything else to add tonight, that will be our 2021 season review.
No, man. Enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you next time.